Welcome back. Now, food inflation may be easing gradually, but Status says benchmarks the food poverty line at 576 Rand. That's above the monthly child support grant of 530 Rand. It has therefore become almost impossible for the less fortunate to feed children adequately, leading to other socioeconomic challenges such as stunting. Mervyn Abrahams, who's a program coordinator for Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity, joins us with more detail on this. Mervyn, a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to all your viewers.
And of course, based on today's CPI reading, we are seeing a general cooling in food price inflation. But I'm tempted to say that the damage has been done for many South Africans who, of course, experienced the last few months of inflation. Many have been put in positions where they simply can't fill their food basket.
Yes, so whilst food inflation is coming down, and we're seeing the same results in our research, however, the cost of living increases. So other costs are food price down. So for the ordinary consumer, they do not feel that inflation is in fact coming down, because as we see perhaps a 1.5% decrease in the cost of food, we are seeing a 15% increase in electricity. And we have to take both of these together in order to see the impact on households, because when electricity prices increase by 15%, it is money taken from the food part of the budget that goes towards paying that. So in a sense, households have not received any relief. In fact, we are seeing continuing household food insecurity spreading across the country.
I'm actually keen to find out a little bit about, the way in which you do your research here, Mervyn, and you say that you can see the price of food coming down. Does that mean that we are seeing retailers, responding to the reducing inflation by literally, deflating prices? Or are we still seeing maybe a disinflation picture there? What are we seeing emerge there?
So what we are seeing is that the very high rates of inflation, so the very high rates of increases on a monthly basis, that is declining at the moment. It does not mean that we're going into a deflationary mode, that prices are now suddenly much cheaper than they were a year ago. But in fact, what we are seeing is that the level of monthly increases are slowing. And that in itself is useful. So for instance, the cost of our basket of 44 very, very basic foods that most low-income households will purchase, should they have sufficient funds, now stand at 5,252 Rand. Now that is a 3.9% increase on where it was in June of last year. So we're not in a deflation mode. It just means that the increases are slowing and it's not as large as it was, say, a year or 18 months ago.
I do see something that is often raised, especially when we look at the child support grant here, is that, at least there are food feeding schemes in schools for many. But of course, this isn't necessarily foolproof. Neither is it, what we should be relying on in terms of getting our children fed.
So exactly. We need to see the child support grant as an investment into our children and an investment into the future of our country, our human capital. So what we are currently seeing is that the child support grant is currently at 530 Rand. The food poverty line, which Stats SA tells us every person should have in order to afford sufficient food, is 760 Rand. And the cost of actually feeding a child a nutritious diet for a month, according to our research, averages around 935. So when you look at that, you will see that the child support grant is 30% below the food poverty line and is about 43% below what it would reasonably cost to feed a child a nutritious meal. And of course, when we speak about the school nutrition policy, which is very welcome and fulfill an important need, of course, it doesn't help the children who are between the ages of 1 and before they reach school age. And that is problematic, because when we look at perhaps one of the most frightening statistics in South Africa, then it is that our children are stunted. So the stunting levels of boy children under the age of 5 are 30%, and the stunting levels of girl children under the age of 5 are 25%. Now, the impact of that stunting, which is the result of chronic undernutrition, because parents didn't have enough money to feed their children properly, the consequence of that will be that our educational outcomes will be much lower than expected. It would be that those children would use our health and our clinic services much, much more. And when those children enter our labor force at age of about 23, 24, they are more likely to enter the labor force as low-skilled workers, meaning that, again, they will earn too little to feed their children. And there we see the intergenerational poverty traps. So in effect, the South African economy pays for not feeding their children properly, but we are paying for it at low education outcomes and increased health expenditure and low economic productivity and low economic growth.
Well, Mervyn, you certainly have painted a very sober picture for us today. Thank you so much for this. I think certainly one worth taking forward here as we get those very sobering figures. Thank you for your time. That was a program coordinator for the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity, Mervyn Abrahams.